Hey guys, what is up? It is me, Pagey, here once again with another video on just DCTV stuff. There's some good stuff that always comes out, or sometimes comes out, and then you get slapped across the face with some bad stuff, or some just confusing stuff. And that's what this video is. So the Green Lantern HBO Max show, in some languages, it is used to mean other words such as pain, agony, delayed, late, and I think just the question mark itself. Now, since it was announced years ago, pre-COVID, that's how you know it was a long time ago. It happened before COVID. I think it was late 2019 that it was first announced when they did that big HBO Max sort of like presentation. I think it was just as HBO Max was about to launch, or it was launching, I think, a few months after that or something, and they announced all the the new shows that they're going to be doing. Green Lantern was one of them. I think a lot of the shows that are in there and that were announced alongside it are heading into their third seasons or fourth seasons and stuff like that. And who knows how things would have been if COVID wasn't a thing for this show. But yeah, we're at about, the 3-year mark since it was first announced. And it's not like there weren't any updates from it. They cast actors for characters in the show, such as Guy Gardner and Alan Scott. And they added new writers and all that. But outside of those announcements, there wasn't much progression that was, public for us to see and that we'll be, being updated about. Well, now we have probably the biggest update about it since it was first announced. And yeah, I'm curious to see where it goes. Now, this came out over the past couple of days, so excuse the delay, but there were other videos I wanted and I guess also needed to get out there before this one. But this exclusive came from the Hollywood Reporter. So we're going to go over what they said, or not everything they said, just the important parts, and then sort of break it down and what I think and also just generally what it means. HBO Max's long gestating Green Lantern TV series is changing gears. The drama, which has been in the works since late 2019, will now focus on John Stewart, one of DC's first black superheroes. The series, from executive producer Greg Berlanti, was to originally have revolved around Guy Gardner and Alan Scott and had already cast Finn Wittrock and Jeremy Irvine as the respective Green Lanterns. So generally, in my thoughts on this, John Stewart was intentionally left off the show from the get-go originally, alongside another character you might know called Hal Jordan, because this series with all these other Green Lanterns, it wasn't just Guy Gardner and Alan Scott. You also had Jessica Cruz, Simon Baz, and I think like a new character they were coming up with as well, like an original character. So there was more Green Lanterns alongside them. They were going to be set in different decades. Like Alan Scott was in like the 40s, I think. Guy Gardner and I think the new character they were making was in the 80s. And then Jessica Cruz and Simon Baz were in the present day. So it was over 3 different periods, and it was sort of going to spread out the story of the Green Lanterns and the Green Lantern Corps as a whole. But this series was just going to lead into a film about Hal Jordan and John Stewart. So the show would build the lore and build the mythos up around the Green Lantern Corps and its history and influence, on everything. So when the movie comes out, it doesn't have to do such heavy lifting. That was an issue with the 2011 movie that had Ryan Reynolds in it. There was so much lore and such little time that they pretty much just skipped over it. So that movie was really simplified and dumbed down, might I say, which ended up hurting. It just turned into sort of like a weird comedy with Green Lantern, or attempted comedy, and it just didn't really work that well. It felt like a really early 2000s superhero movie rather than something that was in the 2010s. So it is very interesting to see that they're going back to John Stewart, and it has you curious what's next after that. But anyway, the article goes on to say, as part of the creative overhaul, writer and showrunner Seth Grahame-Smith has departed the series after completing scripts for a full season of 8 episodes. Sources say Grahame-Smith, who signed on as writer and showrunner a year after Green Lantern was announced, chose to leave the project after weathering a number of regime changes at HBO Max, its parent company Warner Brothers Discovery, producers Warner Brothers Television, and now DC Comics. Now, with this whole thing, you got to feel for Seth Grahame-Smith. I think he was one of the first directors attached to the Flash film. I can't remember if he was the first attached to the Ezra Miller Flash film, but he was definitely one of the first 2 or 3. And now this series with him heading it up is not happening now. Hopefully he catches a break sometime soon with this type of stuff. But yeah, he's 0 for 2 so far. So hopefully the next go he has works out for the better. The decision to refocus Green Lantern arrives at a pivotal time for DC. Sources say the character of John Stewart was off the table to producers who envisioned the show as focusing on the first Green Lantern, the openly gay Alan Scott, and Guy Gardner, as well as a multitude of other Lanterns, from comic book favourites to never-before-seen heroes, which we talked about before with Jessica Cruz, Simon Baz, and that new character they're making. With DC Comics topper Walter Hamada's recent exit, a decision was made to start over and build the show around Stewart, a character who first appeared in the early 1970s and was modelled after Sidney Poitier. Now, this makes you really wonder, with them going back to Jon Stewart and sort of scrapping what they originally had planned, it really makes you wonder, did like a big actor or like a up-and-coming actor put their hand up for Jon Stewart and say, hey, that's a character I want to play? Because that's what they do, you know, with these producers and especially the heads of like the comic book stuff like Marvel and DC. They'll bring in, you know, directors, writers, and also actors, and they'll sort of like, you know, maybe show some interest, especially if they're big. Like if, I don't know, let's just say it was Tom Cruise came in, you'd give him what he wants. You'd give him what he wants because it's Tom Cruise. It goes the same for like Leonardo DiCaprio or something randomly wanted to play a comic book character, or Tom Hanks. You give them what they want because it's such a big name, and their name alone, you know, their name attached to the movie alone just garners interest in itself, regardless of what the character is and the story and everything like that, and who else you cast in the movie. So if a big actor put their hand up for Jon Stewart, that could be why they're going about it this way. Obviously, it's not a movie, it's a series, but it could lead into a movie. Now, that would make sense to me if an actor had done that. And maybe this series then leads into something with Jon Stewart and Hal Jordan in a film. A lot of people know Jon Stewart's iteration of Green Lantern. You know, just they know. Oh, they go there and they look at him and go, "Oh, that's that's Jon Stewart. That's Green Lantern." Of course, they get that from maybe like the Justice League animated shows. That's probably where most people's best source is for where they saw him first, or at least that's where they saw him the most. But he has never been a big seller in the comics, so that could be an issue for some looking at it and going, you know, what's the general interest around this? But I think like a series with him would work really well. But the movie might have to be a team up with Hal Jordan, whether they make it that John is like the older, more experienced Lantern. Maybe he's from the 80s or maybe the 70s. You know, they do mention the 70s when he was first brought into the comics. So maybe that's where they set up that not Hal Jordan, sorry. That's where Jon Stewart's actually originally from. And then they make Hal Jordan the younger, more inexperienced Green Lantern. Maybe that's what happens. Like I remember the original pitch for the film was Lethal Weapon in space. So imagine like Jon Stewart is played by Danny Glover, Hal Jordan by Mel Gibson, and you can envision that movie and go, okay, but obviously put younger actors. I don't think we expect Danny Glover to be putting on a ring and flying around. Don't expect that. It's worth noting that the Green Lantern creative overhaul has nothing to do with the news this week that James Gunn and Peter Safran have been tapped to lead film, TV, and animation at the newly established DC Studios in a role similar to what Kevin Feige is doing at Marvel. So I just include this just to give my quick thoughts on the James Gunn appointment. I think it's a good appointment. It's something I didn't see happening because I didn't think they'd put another creative in regards to someone that's actually like an active director in that role. But for the ones that are there, he's probably the best choice. It's just about whether he makes it that all the movies sort of have to fold into, because that was probably an issue that happened with Snyder. They tried to make the universe like one tone and it didn't really work with certain characters. So hopefully with James Gunn, he just lets people do what they want to do. And that's probably the best way to go about it. And obviously they did say that James Gunn will still direct some stuff. But this is pretty much the setup they had before when they had John Berg and Jeff Johns. They had someone who, writer, knew the comics really well. And then they had more of the producer side with John Berg. So it's a very similar setup to what they had before. They were never going to find one person that was like Kevin Feige, because Kevin Feige is like a very unique person who has a lot of knowledge of the source material and also built their way up through the production ranks to the point where they are in that position now. So it would have been almost impossible to find that one person. So two people was always the best way to go about it. And James Gunn and Peter Safran have worked on multiple things now. So best way to go about things. When HBO Max announced Green Lantern in October 2019, Berlanti described it as the biggest DC show ever made, with plans for the series to go to space. Insiders at the time said it was also poised to be the most expensive show DC ever made, and easily the largest for HBO Max, with a budget estimated in the $120 million range. House of the Dragon, by comparison, cost less than $200 million. And they do a lot of like location shoots and a lot of CGI and stuff. The show's budget going forward is expected to be significantly less, as HBO Max, under David Zaslav's combined Warner Bros. Discovery, is focusing on right-sizing its various assets. As part of the move to find an estimated $3 billion in cost savings, Zaslav and his division leaders have dropped a number of projects, including Berlanti's planned Strange Adventures anthology for HBO Max, J.J. Abrams' HBO original series Demimonde, and the already completed Batgirl feature film. WBD said in an SEC filing this week that it expects to take $2 billion to $2.5 billion in tax write-downs related to content. The 8 previously completed Green Lantern scripts are expected to be included in those tax write-downs, as sources maintain it wasn't Graham Smith's creative that ultimately doomed the first incarnation of the show, but rather its price tag. So this little bit here is very interesting. The little bit there they left right at the end about the tax write-downs, because that's been a big thing that's been attached to the Batgirl stuff and obviously some other things as well. If tax write-downs are once again the main reason the show was scrapped, alongside just general money things like budget and stuff that were already sort of like agreed upon previously, that is disappointing. And the main reason around that is because a Green Lantern show needs some type of budget. They may as well just scrap the show as a whole and just said it's going to be a movie if that's the case. But now they're saying it's still a series, but with Jon Stewart. To me, it seems weird, because you either like you could end up with either a really lame attempt at a show where you go cost-saving measures, and like I'm trying to think of an example of a show that's done it where like someone just doesn't use their powers at all. Like I'm sure there's a show out there. Maybe there was like some sort of show that's done it. I'm not too sure. I can't think of one on the top of my head. But a lot of people might say it'd be like a CW show where they try and cut down on budget and not allow the person or character to use their powers a lot of times. So it's either you get that really lame attempt where they cut, there's like no budget and they ride around that low budget to the point where there's no space stuff and there's no real powers, or they try to go big and it just does not look good at all due to limited budget for CGI and other effects. So the CGI, the effects and everything just looks really bad. It looks really, really dated for a show that probably won't come out until like 2024, 2025 at the earliest. So that's a worry, and it would not surprise me at all if either there is a budget increase or the series itself is scrapped and it just becomes a movie. And it becomes what the original movie was meant to be anyway, with Jon Stewart and Al Jordan. Wouldn't surprise me at all if that's what happens. But that's all wait and find out. I don't think we're going to hear anything about this for a while, because I think James Gunn needs to sit down and do his own planning. And apparently like he's still going to be working on Guardians of the Galaxy while doing the DC stuff until like the middle of next year. So yeah, there's still a lot of stuff to go down. But yeah, guys, thanks for watching. Hopefully you enjoyed the video. If you did, it'd be awesome if you could drop a like on it to show support. Let me know in the comment section down below your various opinions on all this stuff we went over. Are you disappointed that the Green Lantern show is changing up this way? Or do you think it's for the best? Or do you think they should just not do it at all and just make it a movie? Because to me, if they're going to go low budget, just make it a movie so you can actually put some sort of decent budget into it. But I know you might disagree with that. But yeah, let me know your thoughts down there in the comments. And of course, if you are new to the channel, make sure to subscribe. And I will catch you guys later. Goodbye.